Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time live from Radio Row here in Los Angeles, site of Super Bowl 56. I know that it's 8 p.m. Central Time back at home. It's just about 6 o'clock here in LA. And I don't know what you guys can see of Radio Row in the background. I don't know if you know what this thing is. All I know is that it's my first time out here. And I got to tell you guys, it is one of the funniest and also saddest places I have ever been in my life. But we're going to talk about how the Titans can maximize their Super Bowl window here tonight based on, the participants in this game, the Rams and the Bengals, kind of in a position where we all thought the Tennessee Titans would be at the start of the season. But we're happy to have you guys in tonight for the program, and you can share this around if you would be so kind. If you're hanging out with us on Twitter, you can retweet the show. That's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you are hanging out on Facebook Live, you can share now to public. I'm doing it right now from my Facebook page, so we would invite you to do the very same. If you are on YouTube or on Twitch, please go ahead and subscribe to the A to Z Sports channel, where you can get our live stream content 7 days a week and from wherever we pop up in your Facebook feeds. It may be Mobile, Alabama for the Super Bowl. It may be Super Bowl 56, but we're happy to have you guys here with us tonight. Evan White just says, I despise Ryan Tannehill. That is all. Well, we can talk about that, Evan, because that's what I spent a lot of time talking about on Radio Row with a couple of different people today, some people who you're going to hear from throughout the course of the show. So now that more of you are here, go ahead and share it around from Super Bowl Radio Row, and we'll go ahead and get this thing started. Evan White quickly, though, asks, Buck, would you kindly try to meet Jim Rome? He's my all-time favorite. I'll this is going to sound like blasphemy as somebody who does sports talk radio, but I don't know that I know what Jim Rome looks like. I know the name. I know that Jim Rome is like famously a sports talk radio person, but I don't want to be disrespectful to like a legend, but like I have no idea what that guy looks like. Anyway, we'll talk about the Titans and how they're going to try and maximize their Super Bowl window under John Robinson and Mike Vrabel, since we didn't talk about it last night. And now that more of you are here, we can go ahead and start the show on a Wednesday officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time, not from the DraftKings Sportsbook studios, but live from Los Angeles on Radio Row. I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the fine folks at Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford, the best in the business. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. That's where you can find them. Of course, satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs is what you can get from Brymak Mechanical, Brymak, Brymak.com. And you know that if you are looking for your dream address without the stress, the Gary Ashton team of Remax Advantage at GaryAshton.com can put you in a position to succeed. All you got to do is get involved at GaryAshton.com. And of course, DraftKings Sportsbook promo code A2Z Sports gets you in on all the action in the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and I'll tell you how you can get in on the action in Super Bowl 56 later on. So there's a lot of different things happening. This is my first time on Radio Row. We did the radio show here earlier, came back to do prime time. There may be like 20 people left in this giant. This is like you're seeing one quarter, I guess, of Radio Row. There's radio stations from all over the country, and they're all talking about two teams, right, for the most part. The Bengals and the Rams. You got people walking all over the place. You've got Pat McAfee to my right. You've got Jonathan Taylor. I don't know why there are two Colts first that came to mind, but two Colts wandering around. Debo Samuel slinging Old Spice, like everybody's here and everybody's talking about the Super Bowl. So kind of got me processing just to kind of tie it back into local stuff and look at it and say, all right, so how far away are the Tennessee Titans from playing in a game like this, from getting back to a Super Bowl? You know, you talked to Luke Worsham last night about John Robinson and about Mike Vrabel, Austin Stanley, and Zach Bingham. They talked about it this morning as well, and kind of, the different angles of what this team, what this franchise is capable of under those two, and how far it's come from the depths of being completely irrelevant to where it is now, where it's perpetually considered a playoff contender. So tonight we're going to talk about maximizing that Super Bowl window. And I kind of want to start there with your Two Rivers Ford take. So what I want to ask you live here from Super Bowl Radio Row, what do the Titans need most to win a Super Bowl in the 2022 season? Because let's just focus on next year. I'm not talking 10-year plan. I'm not talking Matt Rule's 7-year plan. I'm not talking about any of this stuff. I want to know what it's going to take for them to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the next season, given that they botched it against the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round. Let me know on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can let us know in the comment section, and we'd be grateful for your participation here on A to Z Sports Primetime from Super Bowl 56. And while you guys give me your Two Rivers Ford take, I'll tell you about Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, the best in the business. They've been doing business with honesty and integrity since 1983. That's nearly 40 years in Middle Tennessee, operating with the customer at the forefront. Two Rivers Ford wins awards for their customer service. And in fact, you can do something like the Built For You program, which situates you with whatever Ford you want, any color, any available features. You can customize the vehicle. Two Rivers Ford will build it and bring it, deliver it right to your door. They're all about your convenience and your customer service at Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. So what do the Titans need most to make it to a Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl? I think is the better question. To win a Super Bowl, because it's, to get there is one thing. It is an accomplishment to get there. Of course, we all know this, but to actually put themselves in a conversation about a team who can win one, I think is a much different element of these things. And I was kind of going through that today, and I saw a handful of different people making the rounds. You saw people like Warren Moon, who's, of course, a Houston Oilers great legend of the franchise before they became the Tennessee Titans in Houston. Warren Moon, Hall of Famer. He was actually on 3HL today, and he was talking about this kind of stuff and, really talking more off air about, I think Tannehill's going to be okay, and I think that they are still going to be able to kind of achieve at this level. And you kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this. I talked to a couple of different people today, and I tried to piece together. Basically, that's what my entire offseason has been about. How do you piece together what this thing is supposed to be? What it's supposed to be as a Super Bowl competitor team, as a Super Bowl competitor, as a team that can legitimately achieve, that can continue to win division titles, that can continue to be a playoff contender, and can finally push themselves over the top in the way that they've never done in franchise history. MB says Warren Moon is the best Oiler Titan quarterback of all time. And having seen them in different eras and really, in the case of Warren Moon and really even Steve McNair, watching highlights on YouTube and seeing how different the game was, how different the game was officiated, basically in a way that has drastically helped quarterbacks. Some of the hits, some of the tackles you see on these guys, they would never be allowed. And that may well be so as far as talent is concerned. You probably put those three in the conversation. And it's not murderer's row, right? You have a Hall of Famer in Warren Moon. You have an MVP, a co-MVP, a decade ago, over a decade ago at this point, in Steve McNair. And then you have Ryan Tannehill, who has been, understanding that he is the reason a lot of you guys are pissed off, the reason why a lot of you guys feel like your season ended, and justifiably so. Ryan Tannehill has been one of the most effective quarterbacks that the Titans have had. There haven't been a lot of them, right? It's a very, very small sample size. You can kind of go back to, guys like Dan Pastorini in different eras of football and go back through the history of this thing and see that, high-level quarterback play has not been very easy for the Oilers Titans franchise to come by. So you go and you kind of piece through this thing and you say, all right, so what makes the difference between Ryan Tannehill and the Titans, the Rams and Matt Stafford, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals? All right, going back through history, what makes the difference between, the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, who's played in 10 Super Bowls, who's won 7 of them, has now won more Super Bowls than the New England Patriots. He went and won one with the Bucs, put himself in a class, alone, up a different tier of superstardom, the greatest to ever do it, right? What kind of differentiates Ryan Tannehill from somebody like, just going through the list, of Nick Foles, who just had a good team around him and did have some spectacular performances, particularly in the Super Bowl itself, but as a backup quarterback went on one of the most improbable runs that we've ever seen. There's so many different layers of different kind of quarterbacks that have made it to this game and ended up winning this game. Some far better in a tier unto themselves than the rest of these guys, where you kind of go through and look at the different players. Chip Clark 909 on Twitter says Trevor Lawrence is going to be the new king in the AFC South, and that may well be. I don't know what's going to happen with Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence in year 2. I hope for Trevor Lawrence's sake. I know Titans fans don't root for that, but just as somebody who enjoys the sport and wants to see young quarterbacks succeed, I want to see Trevor Lawrence succeed at a high level. I want to see him get legitimate help. It's tough to imagine, given that that's such a godforsaken franchise as far as the Jacksonville Jags are concerned. But where does this kind of thing, what does this separate, right? What do they need to put them over the top? And it's something that I was talking about with former Ravens and Eagles, 2-time Super Bowl winner, Torrey Smith, today on Radio Row. He was making the rounds. We got a chance to catch up with Torrey earlier in the radio show, and we're going to have a bunch of great guests here from Radio Row tomorrow and Friday as well, jam-packed with a bunch of people that you will want to hear from. And I thought, in talking to Torrey about winning Super Bowls and the different kind of quarterbacks that Torrey has won with, Joe Flacco, who went on an 11-0 touchdown to interception run to win his Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl MVP. Bucket says, imagine not giving Leftwich what he wants so you can hire Doug effing Peterson. Well, there is that, and we'll see how the odds favor the Jacksonville Jags. History tells us that they are not inclined to make the best decisions, so we'll see if what's that line from Dodgeball where they're sitting there calling the final match, and basically, we'll see how this plays out for him, Cotton. That's how this feels like it's going in Jacksonville. But when you kind of boil things down to where the Titans are with this thing and how much better they can be, how much closer they can get, can they do it under this current administration? Torrey Smith with Nick Foles and with Joe Flacco won Super Bowls. And so that was my question to Torrey today, is just how important is the idea of a franchise caliber, high level, elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl? This was Torrey Smith on the radio show. I don't know how to tell Titans fans that they can legitimately win with Ryan Tannehill, but then I look at guys like Joe and Nick who have done it different ways and think that it's not, you need elite quarterback play, but it's just about at the right time, can a professional athlete get hot? And I think Joe and Nick are great examples of that. What was it like to live those two experiences?
I mean, you're absolutely right. I think I tell people all the time, the best team doesn't always win, the hottest team wins. And that's why I wasn't so high on the Titans as the number 1 seed.
Okay.
Simply because they weren't playing their best ball, right? Like when they had stretches during the season, I'm like, oh yeah, this could be it, right? Yeah. But you have to be rolling at the back end. Everything has to be clicking on the back end. And I think if that's not the same, it's a lot harder. And you're able to see that. Obviously, the injury bug, hit the team. Like
91 players, man.
Right.
91 players.
The injury bug, that's a real thing. I know coaches can't make excuses, but I can. That's a real that's a real thing,
Sure.
But when you're not rolling or you're not necessarily as healthy as you can be at the back end, it's tough. But, I think living in two experiences, like, literally where we got hot. Like, that's why those things were able to happen. Joe Flacco had the best Super Bowl run of any quarterback.
I remember 11 touchdowns, 0 picks.
0 picks.
Yeah.
So people can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have won that Super Bowl without him playing that way.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, with Foles, we were like when Carson went out, we didn't, like, guys were like, in the city, it's funny how things change when you win, but people were like, oh my goodness, we don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
And people forget Carson Wentz was one healthy game away from being the MVP. It's crazy how timing can change the narrative of
buddy,
everything.
I work in sports talk radio. It changes by hour.
Right.
Are you kidding
it changes everything. And so, for Foles to get hot and play the way he did, it's amazing because the Falcons game, Foles didn't play lights out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because we won the game. And so you get to the next level, and watch him take off. I mean, it was huge, and to be a part of both runs and really to witness it all come together, it was truly special.
So that was two-time Super Bowl champ Torrey Smith on the radio show today. That full interview, because I thought we had a lot of fun with Torrey Smith talking about the Ravens and Titans rivalry, AJ Brown, and that Super Bowl idea of is Ryan Tannehill capable of going on those kind of quarterback caliber Super Bowl runs, right? Where Joe Flacco with the most improbable, one of the most improbable Super Bowl MVP runs in NFL history. Truly, people don't think about that, and that was at the height of is Joe Flacco elite sports talk radio banter that drove you crazy because you could do it on and on and on and on, and there was evidence on one side and evidence to the contrary, and the way that his career, to Joe Flacco's credit, he's still in the league, but like you don't think of him and Nick Foles as two guys Super Bowl MVP caliber player in it. And so it begs the question, is the Titans quarterback ever going to be capable of doing something like that? To an extent, Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford are completely different conversations, right? Because Joe Burrow is doing it in spite of a terrible offensive line. They came into Tennessee in the divisional round. They took the Titans stuff. The Titans literally gave it back to them in a way that was clear and obvious to everybody when they probably had the closest thing to a kill shot that anybody's seen on Cincinnati yet. Matt Stafford has been great, but he also almost threw the interception that ended their season. He threw that interception that was dropped, hit Jaquiski Tart, the 49er safety, right in the chest. Hit him right in the chest. That's the Matt Stafford death pick. And the safety dropped it. Now Los Angeles and the Rams are in the Super Bowl. So is Ryan Tannehill ever going to be capable of something like that? And, when we talk about what do the Titans need to win a Super Bowl, what one thing is keeping them down, I'm going to tell you what I think it is, read some more of your comments, and discuss it at a little further detail here in just a second, right after I remind you about DraftKings Sportsbook, the moment that we've been waiting for since September. Finally here. We're here in Los Angeles for it. In honor of the big game, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56, is giving new customers 56-1 odds on either team. You bet just $5 or more and get 280 in free bets if your team wins. If you're not a new customer, you can bet on Super Bowl 56 props. Instead, DraftKings Sportsbook offers a wide range of props, wide variety of props throughout the big game. You can take your shot at winning cash by predicting props, like if a non-quarterback will throw a pass, fourth down conversions, total yardage, and so much more. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use promo code A2Z Sports, and get 56-1 odds on either team. You bet just $5 or more and get 280 in free bets if your team wins with promo code A2Z Sports this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56. Must be 21 or older, Tennessee only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. So, when you kind of go through the scenarios on this thing and kind of figuring out, all right, how far away is the local professional football team from being in a game in a place like this, participating in a Super Bowl, given the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals had to beat the Tennessee Titans after beating the Las Vegas Raiders, after beating before beating the Kansas City Chiefs, to run through one of the more improbable Super Bowl runs to find themselves here. And I think that you kind of go through this and say, well, they have a quarterback that's capable enough. I think most reasonable, logical people would sit here and say Ryan Tannehill, with his talent, is capable of going on a similar kind of, weird, fluky Nick Foles, Joe Flacco. Eli Manning's got a couple of these thrown in there. There's so many different examples of subpar to average quarterbacks who have had teams around them, and also because they're professional athletes can get hot at any given time. We've seen a million different examples of this. So when we talk about it and when we kind of look at the numbers and see what around Ryan Tannehill may have failed him, where Ryan Tannehill failed the football team, I think that you kind of go through this and say, there's still, it drives you crazy because the reality of the situation is there's really not that much difference between the two teams that are playing here, given that Titans came to LA in November. I was here. You guys were here with me covering the game when they won on Sunday Night Football in the first game without Derrick Henry, and everybody's looking around like, what the hell did we just watch? And by the way, did it without a great performance from Ryan Tannehill, did it without Derrick Henry. And you're kind of looking around like, this is really, really bizarre. They have no business winning this game. So you go on throughout the course of the season, they continue to win. They find their way into the first overall seed, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, they're so weird because they have no business doing this. And the playoff record is what it is. At this point in the postseason, all 5 postseason games coming as a Tennessee Titan, none with the Miami Dolphins because he got hurt the one year that the Miami Dolphins made the playoffs. Matt Moore played that playoff game. 2-3 is the record. 2 wins, 1 in New England, 1 in Baltimore, a loss in Kansas City, 3 straight losses after that fact, right? Lose in the AFC Championship game, lose at home to the Ravens in 2020, lose at home to the Bengals as the number 1 overall seed in Nashville. It's a pretty glaring thing. But when you kind of boil it down to, how much do you assign a quarterback success with win-loss, I think that you're really doing yourself a disservice when you look at all of the different things. Because this was the same conversation being had around a more talented quarterback for sure. A more talented quarterback for sure, and Matt Stafford. Think about the conversation that we were having about Matt Stafford prior to joining the Rams, where he's clearly talented. He plays for a loser franchise in Detroit. But they never get over the top with just Stafford, right? And they've had players from time to time. They've always had good skill position players from time to time. And you kind of boil that down and be like, all right, so if Matt Stafford, and he didn't, Jaquiski Tartt didn't pick off that pass that could have ended the Rams season, but Matt Stafford has now won 3 straight playoff games. Does that mean that Matt Stafford is the sole reason that the Los Angeles Rams are in the Super Bowl? No, because he almost ended their season single-handedly in the same way that we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo do, in the same way that we saw Ryan Tannehill do, in the same way that we saw Patrick Mahomes do in overtime of the championship game. It's a weird conversation because you spend so much time trying to diagnose and analyze and seeing, all right, where can the football team improve and what can they get rid of? What can they do better with? Blah, 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 blah. And it ultimately boils down to, man, they were right there. And the only difference is in that specific moment, and that's crunch time, right? That's people who cite, in the LeBron Jordan argument, rings over pure high-level athleticism, right? Michael Jordan is one of the greatest winners in American sport, one of the greatest winners in sports. Tom Brady is considered this because in the clutch he comes through. Ryan Tannehill had the ability to do that twice, and both times failed. I mean, 3 times if you want to be technical about it, because they did have that lead on the Kansas City Chiefs. There is enough of a sample size for all of us, myself included, to sit here and look at this and say, all right, Ryan Tannehill has a lot to prove to people. And until such time, he's going to continue to deal with this scrutiny. He's going to continue to deal with this criticism. It's all going to be justified because it's all right there, fact in front of us. And also, I think we can all acknowledge that he's one of the most successful quarterbacks in this franchise history. And when you look at the rest of these things, and how kind of fluky Super Bowl runs can be, how fair or unfair are we being to Ryan Tannehill specifically because he's the guy who threw the 3 picks, right? First play of the game, he throws an interception. It's a deal breaker. It's soul crushing. I spent all that week talking about, I know many people did, spent all that week talking about, all right, he has to do something in the postseason. And then what did he do in the postseason? He completely shit the bed. Like there's so many different layers of that. And until such time as he continues to, show us that he can, I mean, he is going to be considered a choker until such time as he could prove us otherwise. And I think that's a completely fair label, but also understanding that there was plenty of other things outside Ryan Tannehill that failed around it. Part of the problem, yes. The entire problem, of course not. I think that's super, super narrow-minded. Evan says, Buck, you're in touch with the locker room. Well, that's a good, I kinda, but I haven't been. I mean, you guys forget I haven't been in a locker room in going on, right? Like none of us have been. We've still been doing like fence line interviews. So yeah, I mean, I talk to players, right? And even after the season's over, you keep in touch with things that are going on. So yeah, but I'd be lying to you if I said I knew a whole bunch about like Bud Dupree or Danico Autry, like the newer guys. Never once met Jadeveon Clowney. We only had two. I think we had two. We may not even have had two Zoom appearances with him. So, I want to be specific in saying that, yeah, in touch with the locker room, sure, but we haven't been able to get real access to these guys in almost 3 years at this point. But his question is, do you think AJ and friends still believe in Ryan Tannehill? That's the most important part. I think AJ Brown would back him continuously, right? Taylor Lewan has backed him continuously. And do I think they still believe in him? Yes, because not because, they not for the same reasons that I'm espousing, right? Not because we've seen it happen and seen it be successful. And so at some point, why is it happening all regular season long for the most part, right? 11 wins last year, 12 wins this year, home playoff games both years, and then all of a sudden it just stops. I think there's certain, and we've dissected this a lot, right? You break down, is the offense creative enough? No, is the answer. Is Ryan Tannehill good enough in those moments? No, is the answer. I think that both of those things need to improve for them to be legitimately in contention. I think both of those things need to be better. The offensive play calling, the offensive play design, and the success and efficiency, the operation of the quarterback who cannot get out there in the biggest game of the year and, basically be the biggest issue for them on the field. Because, I mean, he was. There's flatly no way around it. And I said, people are going to be able to call him a choker until such time as he proves them otherwise. And he may not do it. We could be having this conversation endlessly and it may never happen. It may be like a Marcus Mariota, you're on this hamster wheel of trying to dissect and analyze the quarterback. And is he the guy? Is he not the guy? And that's the worst possible place to be stuck in, because you don't know if you have the thing. You knew it wasn't Marcus Mariota. You know that you got a lot better than Ryan Tannehill, but now you're in this kind of purgatory where how many regular season wins is good enough to say, yeah, this is good enough? Or is it really coming down to the postseason and his 3 games, 3 straight losses in the playoffs? Is it a big enough sample size to be like, yeah, this guy doesn't have it, right? As unscientific analysis as that might be, like at a certain point, when do you say this guy just doesn't have it? And I don't know what the right point is. All I know is it's not good enough and it needs to be substantially better. Ronnie Sneed says they're on a hamster wheel with Tannehill right now, is my opinion, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And again, I think that's just kind of echoing the same sentiment that I've had, Ronnie, and there will be plenty more time to talk about it, but they need both things to improve: the offensive play design, the offensive creativity, and the quarterback. They all need to be improved. Otherwise, they're going to stay in this kind of football purgatory. Not even hell, but purgatory. And, you trust Mike Vrabel and John Robinson. It's the whole reason they got contract extensions because, largely, even though there are draft misses and there are bad coaching decisions and, you can focus in on all of these things that are much easier to point out than the consistency that they've brought and stabilizing the Tennessee Titans and bringing them up from a literal nowhere franchise. I think a lot can be said for that. Let's move on and let's talk about some news that came out of the NFL today. And I promise I'm not going to do another, Roger Goodell and racism in the NFL show, even though it's tempting because that was the lead on NBC Nightly News. I want to talk about some other news that came out about where NFL teams and where the Titans are in consideration for this, where they're going to play internationally in coming seasons. You're going to hear from Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network on this. Titans have already made one international trip to London a couple of years ago, Mike Vrabel's first year. You want to talk about coaching decisions. The decision to go for 2 to avoid overtime overseas and lose in dramatic fashion against the at the time San Diego Chargers, talking about potentially another international trip for Tennessee. And I want to know where you would most like to see the Titans play internationally in the comments on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Twitch. We'll talk about it together right after I tell you guys about our friends at Brymak Mechanical. BRYMAK, Brymak.com. Satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs. They'll put you in your comfort zone. They've got 3 locations to do it. They've got commercial. They've got the ability to do commercial work, residential work, duct work to improve your air quality, whatever you need at BRYMAK, Brymak.com. So, where would you like to see the Titans play internationally? They've already played a London game, and it's being talked about that the NFL at some point, and potentially the Titans, they're headed to Germany.
Yeah, and you heard Roger Goodell mention it in that clip we played just there. There's going to be now 4 games in Germany, 1 in each of the next 4 years, 2 in Munich, 2 in Frankfurt. And, you know, so much of what the NFL has done internationally is about growing the game and reaching more fans. We've seen games successfully in Mexico over the last couple of years, the NFL going back to Mexico this year, which I know has made so many people in Mexico, so many Mexican fans thrilled. The fans in Germany equally thrilled. Now they get 4 games. And I can't possibly overstate this. If I, just talking about me personally, Patrick, if I ever do anything in Germany regarding the NFL, a show, an interview, the interest is bananas. It is so crazy. They love football. Just anecdotally, they go after my social media. I am for all of this. German fans love the NFL, and the fact that it's going to be live there in person is fantastic. The only other thing that needs to happen is I need to go there with it. I'll talk to my bosses about that. We'll see how far I get.
So that's Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network earlier today, coming off of Roger Goodell's press conference. The NFL is going to play 4 games in Germany in the coming seasons, and the Titans are being discussed as one of the teams to go. You know, I think it's interesting because I made that London trip in Vrabel's first season to London. The game, I mean, the venue was unreal at Wembley Stadium. The game was super dramatic throughout the course of it, coming down to the final play. Right, the 2-point conversion to play for the win instead of the tie overseas. That was what I mean. It was a pretty consequential game, given the fact that they missed the playoffs by a win-and-in situation with the Indianapolis Colts at the end of the season and Blaine Gabbert at quarterback. Right, I think we all remember that quite well. So where would you like to see him play? Drew says Spain. Stephen King says Mexico City. I bet they could steal a lot of fans. Steal a lot of fans from what? From from international side? I don't know if that would be the case. The Mexico City game a couple of years ago was pretty wild. You had laser pointers in the stands shooting lights at Brock Osweiler's eyes. It was the Raiders and the Texans. That did not go smoothly. The field was a mess. Like, the whole thing was a bit of a disaster in Mexico City, but you know, the environment would be really, really cool. Demetrius said he went to the London game. Classic Vrabel move, going for 2 and losing the game. I don't know about classic. It's definitely a Vrabel, you know, it's definitely in his DNA to do things like that. But I think that you know, you benefit from those more often than not, even though that did lose the game. Steven Snyder says Paris. I love Paris. Paris is somewhere I've been a bunch of different times. The food is spectacular. I don't know where they would play in Paris, but it would be a tremendous trip. Fort Campbell for decades was based in Germany, says Puka. That's a really cool fact. I had no idea. Fort Campbell just up the road back in Nashville, or back in Clarksville, Tennessee. That's a really interesting fact. I had no idea. I feel like I should probably make I don't know if they do visitors at Fort Campbell, but I feel like that would be an interesting place to go visit and learn more about, just as somebody who has no idea the history of the base there. Jeremy Graham says this is just one of many factors that I can bring up and show people that proves Downing is more of a problem than Tannehill. For example, did you know at the 49ers game, Downing called a quarterback keeper on a 2nd and 16 in the second quarter at midfield? I felt everyone in the stadium getting a little more stupid just watching it. This actually happened. I'd have to go back and watch it. Jeremy, I don't remember specifically the 2nd and 16 quarterback keeper. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of things that kind of jump out that way. Rio de Janeiro would be beautiful. Rio is a spectacular city to visit. My home Egypt would be cool. I don't know if there's a big Egyptian hunger for NFL football, but I think certainly that the London game has been hugely successful, and I think that the German games will probably be a lot of fun. Stacy on Twitter points out that there's nobody in the background behind me except people cleaning up Radio Row at this point. It's because Radio Row's basically been abandoned for a couple of hours. I tweeted out a video. I don't know how many people saw it. Some dude who's doing a nighttime sports show. He's one of like 6 people left in here at this point, because I did my radio show here at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and to come back and do it at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central time, it's a much different scene. It's a cavernous building. Again, you guys are looking at like 1/3 of this. I tried to put the Super Bowl banners behind me, so like you guys would know that I'm at Super Bowl and not some kind of like sports talk radio convention. Faso Mahmoud says, forgive me if I've mispronounced that, says, you're from Egypt? Yeah, well, my dad's side of the family has lived there for a couple of years. My whole dad's side of the family lives over there. It's a fantastic place. If you've never been, go pay it a visit. The Russian-Ukraine border. No, we cannot play football. Right now, I think we're sending troops right to the border of Russia and Ukraine. So I don't know that a active military situation is where you want to be playing Titans and Jags or something like that. Can you imagine? All right, let's wrap this show up with a video that I thought was pretty interesting today. AJ Brown doesn't usually like get on Twitter with hype videos. He tweeted out the thing about playing baseball or taking batting practice, and the fact that he got drafted by the Padres, and a bunch of pissed off Titans fans in my mention saying, "Oh, he should be focused on football and not tweeting the Padres," or saying that he is good enough to be drafted in the MLB, which he was, right? He's one of the best 2-sport athletes, certainly that I've ever seen in my lifetime. But AJ Brown is I think musing on Twitter, and it's going to be a video that I want to share with you guys here in just a second. The question is going to be, where do you rank AJ Brown among the best Titans wide receivers in the franchise history? You can count Oilers, you can count Titans. Where do you rank AJ Brown? Here in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We'll talk about it together right after I tell you about our friends at the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com. That's where you go for your dream address without the stress. GaryAshton.com will help you win the buyer battle with the Intel Edge. They do it for the Titans. They do it for the Preds. They've done it for me and maximized my value in my property. You can win with the Intel Edge, capitalize on your home equity, cash in while the market's still red hot. There's a bunch of great reasons to trust the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage at GaryAshton.com. So, where do you rank AJ Brown as far as Titans wide receivers are concerned? Chris Frazier says 1. Karen O'Keefe says 1. Anthony Hill says 9th. That seems a tad low. 2 for Puka on Facebook Live. The best since they have been the Titans, says Scott Trevathan. Stacy cites Kendall Wright. You got Kendall Hunter. There's a bunch of scrub wide receivers that have made their way through this franchise and have been fairly underwhelming. I mean, you can go back to Kenny Britt, who had a couple of big plays but never really materialized as what they needed him to be. And when you talk about AJ Brown and the kind of, quote unquote down season that he had because of a lack of availability, the ceiling for AJ Brown, I don't think we've quite seen it yet. And that's exciting, should be exciting for a lot of Titans fans.
From the outside would say, you're an NFL football player,
Exactly.
You're a Pro Bowler, you make a lot of money, you have a lot of notoriety. What could you possibly be down about, right?
Yeah, life happens to everyone. I'm human, just like everyone else. Just because I play this beautiful game, just doesn't mean life is not gonna happen to me too.
Look at me. Mama love you. And I know you ain't no little boy no more, but you'll always be my baby. It seems like only yesterday I was holding you in my arms. Now look at you now, big man. I always taught you that you could have whatever you dream. Well, I want you to hold on to that dream, baby. Hold on to it real tight, 'cause the sky's the limit.
Never been as broke as me. I like that. When I was young, I had to pay a leave. Besides that, the pinstripes and the gray. The one I wore on Mondays and Wednesdays. Flirt, I'm sewing tigers on my shirt and alligators. You want to see the inside? Huh, I see you later. Here come the drama. Oh, that's the with the fake. Wow! Why you punch me in my face? Stay in your place. Play your position. Here come my intuition. Go in this pocket. Rob them while his friends watching. And hoes clocking. Here comes respect. His crew's your crew, or they might be next. Look at they man, big man, they never try, so we roll with them, stole with them, I mean loyalty. Put me milks at lunch, the milks with chocolate, the cookies, butter crunch, 88, Oshkosh and blue and white duck, ask Blunt.
My little girl, man, she's amazing. It's the reason why I'm still going today. I don't even have the words for it. I don't know. She gives me strength. She is who I play for. Without my little girl, I don't know where I'd be. So.
All right. So that's A.J. Brown on his own social media account at 1K Always Open. And, you know, I think when you talk about the top wide receivers with the Titans, Derek Mason is probably sitting at the top. Drew Bennett is there. Nate Washington deserves consideration. Kendall Wright, at even though he was hugely underwhelming as a player. And I think that you have to put AJ above all of those guys, don't you? I mean, again, Derek Mason won, Drew, and we don't have to go in any particular order. I think Derek, though belongs at the top. Drew Bennett, Nate Washington, Kenny Britt, and Kendall Wright. Like, A.J. Brown is better than, he's better than 4 of those 5 guys, and he will probably end up having, just because of the time that they played, even though he's not in a volume passing offense, he's probably more talented. He is more talented than my buddy Derek Mason ever was. So I think at this point, like, you got to consider, at this point in his career, you got to look at him at least top 3 with Bennett and with Mason. And, your hope is if this guy's good enough, he can exceed those expectations. But that's going to do it for us tonight from Radio Row. We're going to be back on the radio show at 10 a.m. Central Time, 8 Pacific Time if you're out here in LA. It's been a lot of fun. This place is completely empty by now, and we'll do prime time again from empty Radio Row tomorrow night to wrap up our Super Bowl coverage out here for the week. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Radio show is going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. We're going to have Mike Golick Sr. on. We're going to have LeGarrette Blount on. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a couple of different people rolling through here, and we're looking forward to having you guys along for the ride. See you tomorrow on the radio, or if not, tomorrow night on primetime.